Next, how the U.S. auto industry picked up speed in its ongoing recovery. Margaret Warner has the story.
2011 turned out to be the strongest year for Detroit's major automakers since the financial crisis hit in 2008. Nearly 13 million vehicles were sold here last year, 10% more than the 11.5 million in 2010, and far more than the 10.4 million sold in 2009, which had marked a quarter-century low. What's more, the three major U.S. automakers captured 47% of the total market in 2011, up from 45% in 2010. The two automakers bailed out in 2009 showed a healthy jump in sales. Chrysler up 26% and GM up 13%. Ford sales were up 11%. For more on Detroit's steps towards recovery, we turn to David Shepardson. He covers the auto business for Detroit News. And welcome back, David. So how significant, in the big scheme of things, how significant a rebound is this for the U.S. automakers?
It's a very big step forward for the industry. I mean, this is an industry that, was on the brink of death, basically, in late 2008, before President Bush stepped in and bailed out the two companies. And the three companies have gone through a really big restructuring, and now they're making gains across the boards, not just in the SUV pickup truck sector where they've been strong traditionally, but in small cars. Both GM and Chrysler have had some success with new small cars, and next week at the Detroit Auto Show, they're going to bring out a couple of new small cars. So I think you have to give them a lot of credit.
What do people you talk to in the industry say about the correlation between car buying and the overall health of the economy?
There's a big one because this is the second biggest purchase that most Americans buy after a house. And people, in order to buy a car, have to be confident, one, about the overall economy, but the stability of their own job. I mean, you're not going to buy a car, and today it averages about $30,000 for a new vehicle bought last year, unless you do feel confident that you're going to be able to make those payments. And that's why it's one of the reasons that the average age of the fleet today is about 10.7 years. It's the oldest it's ever been. So, most people don't drive their cars till they drop over and die in their driveways. They have some option, and if they don't have to buy a new car when times are bad, they try to get another 6 months out of that old clunker.
So you're saying, though, that last year some of the pent-up demand got released. We saw in December, for example, the sales were really high compared to the year before.
Right. The last 7 months of the year, sales were going up. We're now at a sales rate more like 13.5 million vehicles. We could be another up to as high as 14 million vehicles sold next year. But because of the last 3 years where people haven't bought as many cars, there's maybe 10 million fewer used cars in the market. And that's driven up the price of used cars and made the difference between a used and new car smaller. Therefore, more people are considering a new car rather than a used car.
Now, we also, of course, have to look at the competition. In other words, if the U.S. automakers increase their total market share to 47%, that means 53% are mostly foreign automakers. Now, some of them, especially Japan, had its own problems last year.
Right. Let's put that in context. In 1997, Detroit still had 70% market share. So it's still, yes, it's an increase, but it's still down from where they were, and they were at 90% in 1965. So Japan's
never to be seen again.
Not in the new.
Given all the manufacturing that's going on.
Sure, and all the new
automakers.
competitors, absolutely, will never happen again. So Japan struggled with two issues: the tsunami, earthquakes in March pushed back a lot of production. Then there was flooding in Thailand, where they have a lot of plants as well. So that both Toyota and Honda were down about 7%. They struggled to get enough inventory to the U.S. They say they basically resolved those issues. Nissan, however, the third largest Japanese automaker, resolved those issues faster and were able to actually be up last year.
Now, we referred to the bailout, the problems back in 08 and 09. How much of the increase in sales, and I know this is a hard correlation to make, but could be attributed in part to the restructuring and the changes that were made in these auto companies?
There's certainly a big part of that, in the sense that these are companies that don't have to produce as many vehicles. They don't have to keep all those plants running as they did pre-bailout. These companies got smaller, they reduced their labor costs, they reduced their debt, and therefore are able to be profitable at a smaller overall sales rate. In fact, the Obama administration sized the companies to be profitable at as little as 10 to 11 million vehicles sold. So that's why you're seeing the company's making billions of dollars of profits, as opposed to pre-2007, when the industry was at 16 million units. General Motors and Ford were still losing billions of dollars.
Did it also, though, make them change the kind of products they offered?
There is a new focus on small cars, and a good example is GM and the Chevy Cruze. It actually was the best-selling compact. It outsold the Toyota Corolla, which is a big shift for these companies that relied on SUVs, essentially abandoned the car market to Toyota and Honda, and they are ready for that segment when gas prices go back up.
Now, finally, how hard is it going to be, though, for the three U.S. automakers to hold on to even that 47% market share in 2012? In other words, are there advantages they had in 2011 that they're not going to have in 2012, or new challenges?
Oh, it's going to be a huge dogfight. The big issue is Japan is back. There's lots of new models. Hyundai, Kia, the Korean auto group had a huge increase in auto sales. Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes, the European companies have a big focus on the U.S. VW sales are up 26%. They opened a new plant in the U.S. So it's going to be a real battle for every sale. And these companies know that, yes, things are looking good now, but they can't take anything for granted. And every day it's a battle for the hearts and minds.
And does the slowdown in Europe, in terms of the recession there, make the foreign automakers focus all the more on the healthier U.S. market of consumers?
Absolutely. This is the most profitable auto market. We're second to China today, but this is where the companies are making a lot of money. Europe is very uncertain, so that's why you're seeing a lot more focus, a lot of new models coming from Europe.
Well, David Shepardson of the Detroit News, thank you.
Thanks, Margaret.